Hi honeys, it's Michelle. In today's video, I am going to show you and review the books that I read in the month of May. I do apologize that it took so long for me to put this video out. There's really no excuse though, but I am sorry. Also joining me for this video is my cat Marty over here. So I'm not going to talk to him or bug him, because he tends to get a little irritated if I try to include him in videos. But if there's no pressure, he likes to get involved. And I did ask for his permission before I started filming. I asked him if it was okay, and he purred, so I took that as a yes. About 6 years ago, Brad and I went to spend Christmas with my dad. And at the airport, I picked up this book. It's called The Diva Wraps It Up by Krista Davis, and it's a domestic diva mystery. It's part of her domestic diva mystery book series. There is, right now, as I'm filming this, there's 13 books in the series. So I was at the airport, I picked this up because I liked the cover, and I thought, ooh, a good mystery, that'll be fun. I read this book before we even got on the flight home. I read a good chunk of it on the flight out, and then I read the rest of it at my dad's house. I was so in love with this book. So then I tried to find another book by the author. We kind of had to scramble and go to Barnes & Noble on the way home before we went to the airport, so I could try to find another one of her books. And that is when I got this book. This is the first book in the series. This is The Diva Runs Out of Time. And so I read this on the plane home, but this was the time in my life when I fell in love with cozy mystery novels. And Krista Davis was my first author that I really fell in love with that writes these types of novels. And to this day, she's still my favorite one. Cozy mysteries, just in case you're not familiar, there's usually some kind of a hobby or maybe cooking or something like that the main character does, and they intertwine it with being usually a sleuth in their town that they live in to help solve crimes and murders. And that's what cozy mysteries are. So in this particular series, the main character, her name is Sophie, and she is a cook. She does catering, and I think it's the local newspaper. She does a little kind of like Ask Abby, but is kind of like a arts and crafts and cooking kind of Ask Abby. She kind of reminds me of Martha Stewart, except she is a human being. Martha Stewart always struck me as like a Stepford wife or something. Sophie is human. You know, she's a little bit overweight. She has flaws. If she's walking downstairs, she might trip, that kind of thing. So she's not perfect like Martha Stewart. And so in this book, it's probably the least favorite of the series for me. I mean, it is the first one. I think it's Krista Davis's first book, unless she wrote under a pen name. Maybe she did. I don't know. For a first book and the first book in a series, it is still solid. She does a good job of just introducing the main characters and their relationships with each other, getting you used to the town that they live in and the neighborhood that Sophie lives in. Sophie has this girl that she was frenemies with in, I think, junior high and high school, and her name is Natasha. Natasha is also a Martha Stewart type, except she's like the really skinny, pretty type that everybody adores and has her own show on TV and that kind of thing. She also writes an advice column, but I think it's for a magazine instead of a newspaper. And she just kind of seems like the perfect person, except Sophie is more of a home loving kind of like cozy kind of person. And Natasha is probably more like a cold, clean, contemporary lines kind of person, if that makes sense. So they never agree on how things are decorated or what food to cook or how to dress or any of that stuff. But Natasha seems to always be competing with Sophie, to the point where Natasha is now living with Sophie's ex-husband. So that adds a fun dynamic to the whole thing. And most of the town is convinced that Natasha stole Sophie's husband from her. Sophie swears up and down throughout the whole book and, well, most of the series, that that's not the case, that they split up before Natasha and him started dating. So that's the backstory on this. This is a murder mystery. Like I said, this is really, to me, more of an introduction of the characters and the setting and the town. The murder isn't as important to me in this book as some of the other ones. Each chapter starts with an excerpt from the advice column of Natasha or Sophie. And I've noticed Natasha always gives terrible advice, and then they'll throw in, or the author will throw in at different times during the book, people maybe even being injured from different things that they've tried that she recommends, because she does a lot of things where you think, ooh, that would be a safety hazard, or that would be a fire hazard, that kind of thing. So there's a lot of hints about things that she's suggested, and then later on in the book, people being injured or sick from it. Then at the end of the book, because they talk so much about cooking and Sophie's kitchen and all that, at the end of the book, sorry, I've got a page dog-eared here, but they will have recipes that she's talked about in the book. But I love how cozy everything is. She's got a dog and a cat, and I'm a pet lover. So it's just, for me, it's just, I don't know, it's like going home or something. And this is probably the third or fourth time I've read this book. I'm not somebody that remembers a lot of details from books I read. After a couple months, I kind of forget the whole thing. So that's part of why I like to reread books. For me, every time I reread a book, it's pretty much like the first time. I mean, yeah, there's a little bit of detail that I remember, but for the most part, I kind of forget a lot. So I did thoroughly enjoy this. I'm planning on, the reason I read this, I want to go back through the whole series again. And one thing about Krista Davis as well, she has got this talent that unlike any I've ever read, of ending each chapter in a way that makes me feel like I have to keep reading. So I can say, okay, I'm just going to finish this chapter and then I'm going to go to bed. Not with her books. I'll finish the chapter, and the way that last sentence or two is, I think, oh, okay, wait, what's going to happen next? And I have to keep going. And she's so good at that. So I highly recommend this series. The first book is The Diva Runs Out of Time by Krista Davis. Okay, the next book that I want to talk to you about is this. It's The Mother-in-Law by Sally Hepworth. You guys, this book is so good. I read it in just over 24 hours. This was a weekend read for me. I could not put it down. I loved it. I love the cover. The cover alone is just, I got this for summer reading, and I love it so much, you guys. I'm keeping it and I'm going to reread it. That doesn't happen to me very often, maybe 1 out of every 10 books, but for some reason, I just seem to be on kind of a kick lately where I'm really stumbling across quite a few books that I like, which is great. So this book is about a lady named Lucy and her mother-in-law, Diana. Lucy doesn't really care for her mother-in-law, and one day her mother-in-law commits suicide. Well, her mother-in-law commits suicide, leaving a note that says that she has killed herself because she has cancer and she doesn't want to suffer and go through all the horrific things that happen to one's body when they die of cancer. Well, the coroner's report comes back and she didn't have cancer. So the book, it's written in a dual narrative. So some chapters are from Lucy's perspective, and some chapters are from her mother-in-law, Diana's perspective. And the book it's in the now, but then it also goes into the past and where each of them are coming from. This book is not at all what I thought it would be. Reading the back of it, I can't tell you why though. without giving away the book. So you're going to have to read it and find out what I mean. It really, really upset me in some places. And then it really touched my heart in others to the point where I felt very emotional. I didn't actually cry, but I wanted to. The message of this book for me was that it's important to be strong. One of the characters, I'm not going to say who, but one of the characters I really genuinely liked in this book. And by the end of the book, I hated this person. And it was somebody that I thought I'd be able to relate to, and I couldn't. Does that make sense? I don't want to say too much, though. I don't want to give it away. But this is a character that if you know me very well, you would think Michelle, of all people, would really get where this person's coming from, and I just don't. So, and the last thing about this book, it really made me question what a good mother-in-law is, and I still don't have the answer. And I mean, it made me think, okay, if I had a kid, especially if I had a son, I would be questioning while reading this how to be a good mother-in-law to my daughter-in-law, because the relationship between a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law is so completely different than any other relationship there is. So here it is, Sally Hepworth, the mother-in-law. I love this book, and it says right here on the back that this book is really good for anybody who loves Big Little Lies. I didn't read Big Little Lies, but I saw the show and I love it, and I see where they're going with that. So yeah, you might want to read this if you are a Big Little Lies fan. This is another book where the cover kind of drew me in. I was looking for a whole book order full of summer reads that would be just wonderful. And this one is The Magnolia Sisters by Michelle Major. And I don't know how to tell you this, but I hated it. Like, I didn't dislike it, I hated it. And I didn't finish it. I got about halfway through and halfway through. I just decided I couldn't do it anymore. I just found this book to be super cheesy at times. What this book, just to give you a quick, okay, so the main character, her name is Avery. She arrives in this town to collect her inheritance. Her father is somebody who never acknowledged her existence. And she finds out when she gets there that she had two sisters that she doesn't know about. So they all share the same father with different moms. And when she gets there, she starts falling for this guy named Gray, like Grayson, but Gray. And the whole book was just, I mean, at least the part that I read, I just didn't like it. It was really super cheesy. The relationship between her and her sisters, I thought that's what this book would mostly be about. And instead it was, at least the first half, was mostly about the romance between her and Gray. But I didn't like their relationship. Gray he's the kind of guy that knows the right thing to say at the right time. You know, the kind of guy that's like in movies, always says the perfect thing, exactly what you want to hear. For me, that's a big red flag, is a guy that says what you want to hear all the time. So I'm not sure how that's supposed to be sexy, but it wasn't for me. I felt like the character of Gray, he got so attached to her so quickly and was just so in love with her. And she's so perfect. She's got the perfect body. She's just perfect in every way. And I felt like I would feel smothered if I dated a guy like this. In fact, I have dated guys like this, and that's why I'm no longer with them. But the only time I would have found a guy treating me that way or talking to me that way appealing might have been when I was 15. You know what I mean? Like that kind of guy. I did not care halfway through the book what happened to the main character or to any of her relationships. And I was really disappointed. I thought most of the book would be about the sisters. I mean, it is called the Magnolia Sisters, but it wasn't. It should have been called the Magnolia Lovers, probably. And I hate to be mean, but I just genuinely didn't like this. Now, if you like really cheesy books and you like you know, the kind of thing where like it's immediate love. Like, I don't know. To me, some of the stuff that he would say to her is the kind of stuff that maybe after you've been married multiple years and a guy is like, you know, and your spouse is just really knows you and invested in you, they might say some really sweet, endearing things. That's the kind of stuff he was saying to her. And it was just like, he doesn't even know her yet. How does he know enough about her to say those things? I don't know. Just too much for me. So I will not be rereading this or recommending it. But this was, just in case you're interested in that, it was The Magnolia Sisters by Michelle Major. Okay, I did end up saving the best for last. And the reason that I am here so late telling you about my May reads is I started the last book in May, but I didn't finish it until last night. And there's no reason. I've just been really invested in the news and what's going on and what everything means. And that's it. I mean, there's, like I said, there's no excuse for my video being over a week late into the month. I usually do it the first couple of days of the month, so I really do apologize. But you guys, this is the Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. So good. It's good. Did I tell you it's good? It's so good. I really loved this book. This is another one that I'm adding to my reread pile, or my reread bookshelf. I can't believe that in 1 month I read 2 new books that I want to reread. That's pretty unusual for me, but I just loved this book so much. Okay, so what happened in this book? The main character is a lady named Olive. Olive's sister is getting married, and basically the entire wedding party and everybody that attends the wedding except Olive and the groom's brother Ethan get really, really sick with a stomach flu that won't be going away anytime soon. So because of this, Olive and her new brother-in-law's brother decide to go on the honeymoon for the bride and groom, and they don't like each other. And this book, it turns into a romance novel, and it's very funny, and it's just so wonderful. I love the dialogue between these two. I felt like I went on vacation too, which I really needed. I felt like I went to Maui with them. The sex scenes, oh my gosh, you guys, they were the kind of sex scenes I really like. You know, a lot of the older romance novels, it's like, he thrust his dagger into her quivering. Yeah, that's not what this one was. This was, things start getting hot and heavy, it fades to black, and then there's the next morning. I prefer that. I want to use my imagination. I don't know what it is, but I find my imagination to be a lot sexier than any intimate scene I might read about in a book. I don't know why, but I just like my imagination more. I guess I'm a little old-fashioned that way, but I really appreciated that I didn't have to constantly read fluff. So if you don't like those kind of scenes, you might really love this book because it didn't do that. It just led up to it, but it didn't go into it. Once the clothes started coming off, that was it. This book, it does have some swearing in it, so if you don't like swearing, it might not be the book for you, but it's just so brutally honest. It's so real. And I wanted to give you an example of what I'm talking about, okay? So I'm going to read from one of the pages in here, just to give you an idea of like how genuine and real it is. What if I have to go to the bathroom? Do I turn on the shower to muffle the sounds? What if he farts in his sleep and I can hear it? What do I do? Oh God. Okay. That's part of just one of the scenes of the book. I just thought it was so funny because that's a real part of life. It's a real part of being around somebody, especially if it's somebody that you're dating or beginning to be intimate with. It's a human experience that you don't normally read about in books. They always kind of leave those details out. And so I thought it was really neat how they left the stuff I didn't really want to hear about out, but they put all these human elements into it that made me relate to the characters so much more. The authors, it's actually two authors that are friends that write these Christina Lauren books. Christina Lauren is a pen name that they came up together. It's the combination of their two first names. But they have this way of describing places, not just like cities or towns, but maybe the inside of a restaurant or the inside of an apartment or a hotel room or what have you, that makes me feel like I'm there without there being too much description. And sometimes there's so much time spent describing the room that you kind of forget the storyline. So I loved that they described it. I felt like I was there, but it wasn't too much. I'm sorry, I just noticed. Look at all the catnip he has in his fur. Anyway, so I really did enjoy that. I did. It kind of felt like a cozy mystery to me in that way. Like, it just felt so cozy, feeling like I was there. I was invested. I was in the room. I could like feel the room. I could smell the room, but not too much. Does that make sense? There was a couple of things I learned from the book as well. One of them was, when somebody offends you or hurts your feelings, it's important to try to find out where they're coming from, because sometimes where they're coming from and where you think they're coming from aren't the same thing. And I'm like that. I tend to assume a lot. A lot. I do. I assume that I know exactly where somebody's coming from, or, I think somebody is being malicious when they're not, or that kind of thing. And this book kind of highlighted that for me, that, seeing somebody else be that way, that maybe that's not the best way to be. It's always nice to be able to step outside of yourself and see how you act through someone else, and maybe see that you don't like how you act. The other one was holding a grudge. I'm a huge grudge holder. I'm just, to be honest with you, and it's kind of made me re-experience grudges and what they mean, and forgiveness and what that means. The other thing that I felt just so genuinely about these characters was the way that they fall in love. It's kind of what it feels like when you really do fall in love, when you really do find the one. That's what it felt like for me. And I feel like a lot of books, kind of like the Magnolia Sisters, where it doesn't really describe what real love is like or what it really feels like to me. For me, this one did. And I really love that. So I highly recommend this book. Oh, it's such a good book, and it's the perfect book to read over summer. It really does help you feel like you're going to Maui with these two characters. So that was everything that I read in the month of May. Gosh, I sure hope that you enjoyed this book review. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them. And if you haven't, but maybe you want to read one, let me know. I do have a Goodreads page that I just started up, and I will have the links to that down in the description box. So thank you so much for watching. I look forward to showing you the books that I end up reading in the month of June. You have a great rest of your day. I love you. Bye.